Hello, welcome. This is my 6th or 7th attempt at recording this because, once again, I took too long to say what I had to say. But I'm glad you're here, and but I should start by issuing some disclaimers. Number one, I am not a mental health professional at all. I don't intend to be either. I'm just a long-time patient slash client. I've been in and out of therapy since I was 4 because, my preschool teachers thought I was autistic. And that remains a question mark, but that's neither here nor there. Disclaimer number 2, therapy is not a cure-all, nor is it for everybody. I have heard a lot of people angry at being told to go to therapy for any problem that they bring to somebody. The person just tells them to go to therapy. I personally am of the opinion that therapy is a great start at equipping yourself with coping tools and knowledge about yourself and others. It can help you kind of practice more empathy and compassion as you move about in the world, and not only that, but more it also helps you become more self-aware and take more responsibility for how you show up in the world, which, believe it or not, has a ripple effect. I think therapy is very useful, and I think it's a good thing for a lot of people. But I understand that not everybody will benefit from it the way I have, or the way many others have talked about. And of course, they're doing road work outside when I'm trying to record. Anyway, so I am here to share my experiences, my last couple of experiences in finding support when I was struggling. I'm here to share some tips that could be helpful, some things that I didn't know when I was first starting out to look for support on my own. I found the process very daunting and off-putting, and if I wasn't so stubborn, I probably would have given up in more ways than one. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of list it out in a very basic, bare bones fashion, and then if you are so inclined, and if you have patience for crutch words, pauses, and rambling, then by all means, there will be a lot more information provided in this video. Also, I will have this up on my Ko-fi page in written form, so that if that is easier for you to digest, then I recommend going there. And I think also for some visual aids that I will include, just to show you how things look sometimes. Anyway, so, okay. When I realized that I was struggling, and I was either depressed, anxious, or usually both, this last time I went about it by, number one, I soul searched. The way I soul search is by journaling. So I thought about and got really clear about what was troubling me, to what extent, and the kind of help that I would want to receive, the kind of support that I could work with. Did I want someone to challenge me? Did I want someone to, kind of treat me with kid gloves while I figured stuff out? That type of thing. Just think of, if you could have your own personal Gandalf, what would that look like? Let's see. Then number 2, I researched what therapy modalities would support my current struggles best. Because there are so many different types of therapy, and I think an easy way to plug into an internet search bar, it would be what therapy modalities best support job loss or divorce or family issues or depression or anxiety or trauma. Um, just you can take to the internets and just type that in, and you should get some pretty handy information. Make note of what you find. Then 3, I didn't do this at this step of the process, but I wish I had. It would have saved me so much anxiety and overthinking. Um, Using the information that you gathered from your soul searching, write out a brief template letter as if you were reaching out to therapists already. Um, so basically, introduce yourself, detail very briefly what you're struggling with and the kind of support you'd like to receive, and then any sort of logistical information like payment, insurance info, sliding scale fees. I'll talk about those more in a minute. I guess appointment times if you need to have the therapist available at a certain time, because you can only go to therapy during your lunch break, that kind of thing. And then, yeah, sign off. And, when it comes to a template, that way it's really easy to switch out information. So you can be like, dear, brackets, last name. I'll have a sample on my coffee page and I'll talk more about it in a minute. Then number 4, you want to build a spreadsheet. I know it sounds really managerial or project managerial. I guess that's my corporate background. So I know it sounds a little bit like too much, but trust me, having a column with space for names, contact info, website links, a note section where you can kind of write out why the therapist you listed is somebody of interest to you. Yeah, and even like a little column for like dates of contact, like kind of tracking when you've reached out to what therapist, so you can decide what to do next. If, for example, they haven't reached back out to you after 2 tries, it's like, do I really want to work with this person? They don't even bother to respond. All depends on personal preference. Number 5, you want to start your search for therapists. You can use your insurance portal. You can use the website Psychology Today. You can use services like SonderMind. I'll go a little bit more in depth later in the video. And 6, you want to, I'm saying you want to, but this is what I did. So you can do what you want. But yeah, I went ahead and read the profiles and the websites of the therapists that I found using those search devices. And then I went about populating the spreadsheet. So I would find this therapist named, like, I don't know, Rose Firebush, and it's like, oh great, like she has blue hair like I used to have, and she deals with complex trauma and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Perfect. And she does EMDR. Oh my god. So I would put her name in the spreadsheet. I would find her phone number and email in the profile, and write those down too in the spreadsheet. And then I would, whatever website she would link, I would put that. Basically populate the spreadsheet, like fill it out with all the names that you find of therapists that seem like a good match for you. Then number 7, after you kind of take a break, because that can be pretty intense work, filling out that spreadsheet and studying all those profiles, I would recommend kind of getting a good night's sleep and then taking stuff back up in the morning. So like maybe in the morning or early afternoon or whenever works best for you, reach out to 2 to 3 therapists a day using the template letter that you made in step 3. Again, I'm saying this like, oh, you must do this, but this is what I did. I'm just kind of mixing up first person and second person today. I'm going through it, so I'm happy I have therapy tomorrow. Let me see. The number 8, you want to interview the therapists that do reach out to you and say, yes, let's talk more. And I'll go into how to get kind of those interviews. It's pretty easy. But yeah. and I'll go into what would be beneficial to talk about during those interviews. Then 9, after every interview, or like interviews, like all the interviews, I always take time to sleep on it. Never make the decision of like, I'm gonna work with you, without giving yourself about a day at least to think about and process the interview that you had with whatever therapist is in mind. So then after you do take some time to sleep on it and think about it, then 10, you choose your fighter. You choose your therapist, and I will talk about what the start of that work could look like ideally. Yeah. So yeah, that was the very quick version of what I did and what you can do to find a therapist. And I think I've done it enough times that it's like kind of second nature now. So don't despair if this all seems like a lot. I think for me it was easier to do as I went along, because I realized that I was trying to help myself, and relief would be coming soon. The big thing, I think, when you're struggling with your mental health is feeling like there's no relief, at least when it comes to depression and anxiety, which I have. It just kind of feels like, oh my God, this will never get better. But just the act of trying to get better, at least for me, it was helpful. So again, this is all anecdotal. I'm not a professional, but all right, I think I should start on the more detailed way of talking about this. Let me see if I can. I have notes, because otherwise I would stammer and ramble even more than I already do. So, okay. For the first step, yeah, I think I was noticing a lot of anxiety in my day-to-day. I think things that didn't used to make me anxious were starting to make me anxious. For example, running basic errands outside of my house was making me anxious. Going out on dates with anyone was making me anxious. Making new friends was making me anxious. And then I noticed that I was like sleeping more, and I was having a more preoccupation with unsubscribing from life. So I think that last one is a big red flag for me. When I start planning, it wasn't just thinking about it. I was making plans and like looking at details of my day-to-day and being like, this could happen, kind of thing. That was a big red flag, because I hadn't experienced that in many years. Like, I think I had done a lot of inner work to just confront a lot, and so I had kind of been in remission, if you will. Sorry. And so that's when I was like, okay, I have to really get clear, like, on why, well, on what's happening for me. And that was hard, because sometimes when depression gets really severe, you can't exactly form coherent sentences. So that is another sign for me. I was having a hard time talking, and I was having a hard time, even the most basic sentences, I had to, there would be so many spaces in between words. So that was like, oh, okay, I'm having cognitive issues. But yeah, the way I get clear and soul search is by journaling. I have several notebooks around me at all times, and depending on what I need to figure out, I just open whichever one it is and start scribbling. I do freeform thought, or like freeform writing, I guess. I just write without editing or trying to make it sound pretty in those journals. And so I journaled about, I wrote down my feelings. I wrote down, no matter how ugly it got, I wrote that down. And then I wrote about the kind of person that I would like to have support me, or like help me with the rope as I climb out of that hole. Um, like, did I need them to call me out on my bullshit? Yes. Did I need them to be kind with me and let me vent about my bullshit? Yes. Did I need them to be knowledgeable about childhood trauma, depression, and anxiety, particularly in highly intelligent and highly sensitive people? Because that's me. Yes. And did I need them to be at least slightly goofy or okay with weirdness, weird, quirky people? Yes. So I wrote all that down. And then I moved on to step 2, because my laptop was right on my lap, burning a hole, and I literally typed into Google search, what therapy modality best supports, depression, anxiety. And then, because I was very aware of the fact that I was dealing with childhood trauma that was being replicated in my adulthood, I looked for trauma and like what therapy modality best works for trauma. And that's how I found out about EMDR, which is what I'm going through right now. Because there are different modalities that work well for different things. For example, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I think I said that right. Probably not. It basically has you reprocess your trauma. You talk about your trauma, and there is either repetitive movement that your eyes follow, or you are, patting your arms in a rhythm while you're talking about it, and the therapist is guiding you through. So that's pretty nifty. It's still a little bit mysterious to me how it works, but it works well. And then there's dialectical behavior therapy, which works well for mood disorders, personality disorders, suicidal ideation, or any urge to harm your person, yourself. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is very good for working in the present day. So if you're having like a very circumstantial episode due to job loss or a breakup or something like that, it works really well for treating symptoms like depression or anxiety due to those circumstances. So it's always good to search. There are so many modalities. I don't know so much about so many of them, but I think CBT, DBT are pretty standard, I think. And then EMDR is a bit more specialized, but it's I think more and more therapists are practicing it. Then step 3, like I said in the summary before, or the synopsis, whatever. Like I said before, I didn't do it too early in the process, but I wish I had, because I just overthink everything that I write. And the idea of reaching out to 20 plus therapists and composing a letter for each and every one of them was really daunting, especially because I was depressed and anxious and I couldn't think straight. I barely remembered my name. Fully serious. And so what I did when I had the bandwidth or capacity to do it, I wrote a very brief letter as if I was reaching out to therapists already. And I think that was during a pause when I was like, I can't keep composing custom letters for everybody. And I was like, well, what would I do at work? I would write a template and just change out the name. Dear Mr. blah, 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 information here, and then switch out the dates that were available. So in the letter, you want to include, obviously an introduction. My name is so-and-so. You want to write out maybe 1 or 2 sentences about what is troubling you, or what you're struggling with. Keep it brief and not too personal, and I'll tell you why in a bit. And then include any sort of information like, do you accept such and such insurance? And do you have a sliding scale fee? Because sometimes people don't have insurance because they lost their job, for example. And so sometimes therapists have certain amount of slots that they are able to take clients or patients at a reduced fee. So where usually they would charge maybe $200 an hour, they would charge maybe like 150 or 130. It's kind of rare nowadays, I feel like, and it's not, when I've had to like go on sliding scale fees, I feel like it's never been like a whole huge lot of help. But I mean, these are trained professionals, and I feel like they deserve to be paid. But yeah, I think that is something to discuss right off the bat. Do you have a sliding scale fee? If so, what is it? And so definitely include that in your template, as well as availability whenever you can talk, or if you need them to be available. Like I said, I think before, at a certain time, if you have to go to work and like the only time you can talk to a therapist is during your lunch break, then yeah, can you do Thursdays at 12 or something like that? And I can talk to you this date at this time, this date at this time, or this date at this time. Please let me know. And so, yeah, just have that ready, set it aside, and move on to step 4, which is, what did I do? I built, once again, yeah, I didn't do this at this part of the process. I did it way too late, but this is where you learn from my mistakes. So build a spreadsheet is what I would recommend, and have it include a column for the therapist name, a column for the therapist contact info, so email and phone number. You're going to want both. For me, it was essential to have email because I don't like talking on the phone to strangers. Then you want to have their website. Yeah, usually therapists have a website detailing who they are, what they work, what issues they work with, just their vibe. You know, like what drives them to want to help people. Very informative websites, usually. So you want to make sure you keep a record of that, and also a space for notes, so you can kind of be researching therapists and then also writing down, oh, this therapist works with this particular issue of mine, and they are, for example, if you are Latino, like, and they, you know, let's say your issues are family issues. It's like, oh, like they work with family issues, they specialize in that, and they are Latino, so they understand the particular pressure that, you know, Latino like family systems face. Because yeah, I think expectations are different culturally when it comes to the family unit. Like how do you treat your elders, and how do you, that kind of thing. So, or you know, if I were still living in the island, it's like, well, I only speak this language, and I need somebody who works with trauma, and so this person works, you know, they're specialized in trauma, and they speak Spanish, you know, like in my case. So yeah, just leave space for notes. I also included later down the line a column where it's like, oh, when did I contact this therapist? So that way it could make the process of elimination easier. So that way I wouldn't have to remember, did I write this person already? Yeah, because you don't always reach out through your own email inbox, so it's hard to keep track. Okay. Let me see, 3, 4, the spreadsheet, yeah. Well, then 5, I guess step 5 was the next step for me, was I took to the internet again, and I guess I took to different parts of the internet. So when I was still getting the hang of finding a therapist, I went to my insurance web portal. You know, like you log in and you can see your claims, you can see what benefits you have, you can pay your insurance bill if you have to pay something. So I used that at first. It's not my favorite because yes, they can list all the providers that are, you know, therapists, and they accept your insurance. Hummingbird. Um, but they don't, at least when I was doing it, they don't give you that much information about them aside from their location and contact info, and it's usually just a phone number. So it's like, okay, you can use that, but then you can also take to my preferred way of searching, which is Psychology Today's Find a Therapist function, or is it Find a Provider? It's either Find a Therapist or Find a Provider. I think it's Find a Therapist. Once you click into that part of psychologytoday.com, I think, let me try that really quick. Psychologytoday.com. Yeah, that's it. I have bookmarks. You go to the website, go to Find a Therapist, and then they will ask you for your city, your state, or your zip code. And yeah, it's important that you find a therapist that is licensed to practice in your state. And so that's why I don't go right to Google and go like, find a therapist like near me, because it's like, well, you know, sometimes Google just throws you therapists and it's like, oh, well, that person doesn't work and isn't licensed in this state anymore. They were at one point, but not anymore. So using Psychology Today's Find a Therapist and like filter by city or state or zip code is very useful in that sense. And then once you get that first list of like all the therapists listed in Psychology Today in your area, then you can filter down from there. You can filter down by the issues that you want them to specialize in, you want your therapist to deal with. You can filter by language spoken. You can filter by religion, nationality, by how they identify. You know, I was happy to see like there was an option for non-binary, you know, where before it was just like male, female, and it's like, okay. And you can, yeah, I guess you can also look by modality, which is useful, which is why I had you know, like I had to do that research in step 2, because then I wouldn't have known that I need a therapist that practices EMDR. It would have just been like more talk therapy for me, which I've done for over a decade. Enough. I was hitting kind of a class ceiling there. So use those filters. The filters are your friends. And when it comes to, for example, if you are looking for an EMDR therapist, emdria.org is a great source, because that is the organization or the association that trains therapists in administering EMDR. And they have their own Find a Therapist or Find a Provider function as well. And I don't think they have as many filters as Psychology Today, but they have filters and they're pretty good. So that's one I recommend. Use the filters. Filters are your friends. And definitely have your spreadsheet handy, because you're going to use it next up. One more website that I did find useful when I just couldn't think straight. It was, what's it called? Sondermind. Sondermind. Let me see, is it sondermind.org or sondermind.com? It's sondermind.com. And so I'll try to link those below in the description. But yeah, basically you create an account, they have you fill out this pretty thorough questionnaire, helping you suss out what you need help with and the kind of help you'd like. They also take down, if you do use insurance, they take down your insurance information to make sure that the therapist works within your network. And yeah, they send you therapist matches, which is very odd. And I think one of the things that I wasn't too keen on at the time when I used it, number one, not every state can use Sondermind. I think I recommended it to somebody on the West Coast when I was in the South, and I was using it in the South, and the state they were in, they couldn't use it. So that can be troublesome. Make sure that you can use it in your area. But also, I didn't like the fact that it was kind of formatted like, I guess like a dating app where it's like, okay, like they give you one option and you have to either accept talking to this person or you have to reject talking to this person. I mean, that's not what the functions are called in the interface, but still, it kind of felt like, okay, I can't see all my options and pick from there. I have to go one by one and like swipe left or swipe right. And it's like that's not that didn't feel too good for me, but it was kind of a lifesaver because I needed help urgently, and it kind of made the process really easy for me because I guess I had insurance and it was like, okay. And in case you don't have insurance, they also they ask you that, and they try to work with that too. And I think they try to work within your budget. I think you indicate how much you could afford if you didn't have insurance. So the next step I did, and that was step 6. So yeah, I would just study all the listings I would get from Sondermind. I would study them too, but Psychology Today, the insurance portal, whatever, and I would go through their profiles. And I'm thinking more of Psychology Today because they show you like little blurbs at first when in the search results, but you can click into the profile and then it will give you a plethora of information, specialty issues they deal with, and like then they list like all the other issues they could help with, but that they're not like super experts at. And they have their own website. They have something that they wrote out, kind of detailing who they are and how they work. But yeah, I like going to the personal websites or independent websites because I feel like Psychology Today doesn't give a whole lot of room for personality to shine through. So so it was kind of intense in the sense that I had to sit down and study all these materials one by one, by like therapist by therapist. But again, I guess in a way it was kind of fun to be like, oh, you know, just kind of try to get an idea of who this person is and if you would work well together. It was kind of using an informed imagination. So I kind of enjoyed that process, even though I was depressed as fuck. So do that, and don't push yourself. Don't try to get like 20 therapists on your like spreadsheet. You know, like don't try to select like a whole bunch of therapists. Like if you select maybe 5 to 10, like 10 is impressive. Like if you select 5 in the first day, that's huge. That gives you plenty to work with. And so study their profiles and their websites, and when you resonate with somebody, put them on your spreadsheet and fill out all the information that you need, like the contact info, the website, the notes, the, you know, like everything. And definitely write down what you liked, write down what reservations you have about working with this person perhaps. I like to color code my spreadsheet. So if I was really excited about working with somebody, I will highlight them in green, like green means go. And then if I was kind of hesitant to work with somebody, I would highlight it in yellow. Means like proceed with caution. And if anybody was going to be highlighted in red, I would not work with them, and I wouldn't put them on my sheet in the first place. So I guess I would gray out the bro of like the therapists who wouldn't either reach back out to me after several attempts, or that they somehow said no, that they couldn't work with me. So I would gray that out just for my convenience, and like kind of repopulate with other therapists as I continued the search. So yeah, I think some yellow flags would be folks, I would say red flags. For me, there were red flags is folks who don't have their own personal websites and they just have like a little tiny bit of information on their Psychology Today or whatever like profiles. I think it may be a little too much time and effort wasted, because yeah, you can interview them and everything, but even then, I think you have less of an informed idea when you just do a phone interview and then start working with them, as opposed to reading through a lot of their material, then talking to them and asking more specific questions in the interview, and then working with them. So just for me, I would not like go with somebody who doesn't have their own website, talking about who they are. Or a red flag for sure for me is folks who do not offer 15 to 30-minute free consultations. Usually it would be on their Psychology Today profile or in their website. I would be very hesitant, because imagine that you set up an appointment to talk to somebody, and it counts as basically your first appointment. You're out like $130+, and then you don't want to work with them in the first place because you didn't vibe with them. What is that? No. So I think a good therapist would be knowledgeable that there needs to be kind of a mutual match and offer those consultations. A lot of them do nowadays, so that's not too much to ask. But at the same time, their time is precious, so keep those appointments if you make them, okay? Keep those interviews. Then step 7, I put aside the spreadsheet after compiling 5 therapists in that first day, because I was already exhausted. It was 5 and I was like like about to fall over. So yeah, I had a nice meal, I had some sleep, and then I moved on to reaching out to the therapist, which is step 7. I aimed to reach out to 2 to 3 a day. I didn't want to do too much. I didn't want to push myself, even with the template letter that I composed in step 3. Even once I finally did that, I didn't want to wear myself out. But the template did make it a lot easier, and then it kind of became more of a 5 therapists a day contacted at a minimum. I did forget to detail why it was a good idea to not have your brief note get too personal or too detailed with what you're struggling with. Here's why. You're going to be reaching out to a lot of people when you're in a very vulnerable, irritable, potentially, state. And if you pour your heart out into this letter and tell them all the things that are troubling you, I can tell you from experience that it will not feel good when you get a no in return, even though you know that it's not personal. It's nothing about you. It's just they don't have the time slots available. They don't specialize in what you're struggling with, or they just, they can't take anybody on at the time. So, but even while logically you know that, emotionally it's going to feel like a rejection, even though it's not a rejection. It's more of a redirection, which honestly most rejection is. But it's just a very benign, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's still going to suck. And not only is it good practice to be mindful of the bandwidth of people you talk to, so don't just trauma dump when somebody asks you, hey, how you doing? It's like, oh my God, let me tell you, I am going through it, girl. And it's like, oh no, I'm just ringing up your groceries, ma'am. It's a good practice to just answer honestly but succinctly, just for other people's benefit, but also your own benefit, because not everybody deserves your vulnerability. Not everybody deserves to know that much or look that deeply within you, okay? So save that for the therapist who shows up for you and can work with you and that you vibe with. There's going to be plenty of time to unpack everything that you tried to cram into those 2 little sentences. So, yeah, use the brief template letter, fill it out with the right information, and just aim to reach out to 2 to 3 therapists a day. That's fantastic work already. If you can make it to 5, that's amazing. And also I will have the template, like a template letter sample in my Ko-fi page. So, which you can visit, and if you find it, the page helpful or just somehow entertaining, feel free to donate if you are so inclined. If you are not, I get it. Tough times. Thank you for visiting anyway. And so, okay. Next, what did I do? Oh, well, yeah. When I was reaching out, I was getting a lot of no's, but I was getting some yeses after a couple of days. It's like, yes, let's talk more. I have these times available. Let's meet up then. And usually it's by phone. Some therapists do like doing things by Zoom, that's kind of extra nice because then you can get a better vibe. Not as good as in person, but still. And I guess some therapists are probably, no, I guess they save the in-person stuff for the first visit. But yeah, phone or Zoom. And so they should come ready with their own information, like who are they, what do they do, gauging from what you wrote, how they could support you potentially, their experience, their training. They're going to talk about that. It would also be helpful if you have your own questions ready. My voice went away there. If you have your own questions ready, it would be very helpful. Just based on what you get from their website. Let me think. I know it's kind of hard to come up with questions because, especially if you haven't really done a lot of therapy in the past. I guess you could ask them what their communication style is. Like, you could also ask them if there's something about you that is a little different than the general population, which I think everybody has something a little niche in them. You can ask them how they work with somebody like that. For me, for example, I wanted somebody who was very intelligent and sensitive and like very well versed in trauma and anxiety, but I also needed to work with somebody who would not ignore my creative side and the trauma there, or how my trauma was manifesting there, or both actually, because those two things are very different. Because in the past I've received very good therapy about like my family issues and about my depression and my anxiety, but when it came to like I really do want to do something with my creativity, even if I don't make it, I just want it out there. I want to share it, but I keep finding myself not sharing it, and they would just kind of like ignore it. It was very kind of, I don't know, I found it kind of crazy making, because it was as if I hadn't said anything, and I was starting to become hurt by that way of dealing with that aspect of me, which is very, very much like a big part of me. So I ask questions about like, how have you worked with creative folks before, and just those kind of questions. It's good to have questions like that ready, not too many because it's only 15 to 30 minutes, but ask the important ones. Definitely ask them. They will welcome that. They want that. Oh, I guess I also how experienced are you working with adult children of narcissists was another one for me. So are they long-term? Are they short-term? Do they work do they have like a treatment plan that they craft for their patients once they know more? How does payment happen? What is your cancellation policy? You want to ask those questions too, because for me, kind of a yellow flag is somebody with a long cancellation notice policy. If they need you to tell them 72 hours in advance that you can't make it, that's a little hard, especially when you get a cold maybe 24 hours before or 48 hours before you start feeling a little scratchy, and you tell them that's still not enough. Yeah, I didn't have the best experience with a therapist like that. That is a situation I can speak from anecdotally. And so Another, I think, a red flag is when they pressure you to get on the calendar. You know, like, okay, so our first visit will be this date, right? And it's like, no, I need a day to think. And obviously, if it doesn't feel right to you, don't do it. Don't work with that person. Even if they're saying all the right things, your gut is perceiving something. Your body knows a lot, and so trust that, and don't move forward with them. Okay. Oh, also, if they hem and haw the whole like having a treatment plan, if they don't know what to say to that, because then they'll just kind of like keep you indefinitely. And I think a good therapist, or I feel like in my experience, good therapists have been wanting to equip you so that you can get out there and deal with all the bullshit that life throws at you on your own. Um, Even if it's like relatively new situations, there's always kind of a parallel that you can use certain coping tools with. And so that, I feel like that's what the best therapists that have been like awesome to me, that's what they've wanted. That's what they worked toward with me. So step 9, I definitely made it a point to sleep on it. I made it a point to tell those therapists that were like just wanting to like jump right in to be like, no, actually, I need a day to just kind of process the interview and think about everything. And that was extremely beneficial. And then last step is you choose your therapist, contact them, and go to your first appointment. In the first appointment, you guys will probably unpack more everything that you're struggling with. I think there's never any time for everything to be unpacked, and there will always be new stuff that comes up in relation to what you're struggling with. But based on what you learned the first couple of appointments, the therapist will devise a treatment plan for you to know more or less, like, okay, like, let's see how long we can work together. This is what it'll cost. Like, what do you think? So it should be a two-way conversation where you guys really figure out how y'all are working together. Yeah. And so that's it. That's all. That's all. And I know that I'm just some crazy auntie on the internet. Got lost on her way to Ann Taylor Loft or something. But I want to say that I think it's amazing that you are strong enough and intelligent enough and aware enough to understand that we can't go it alone all the time. And having a professional support you is actually a really good thing, and I feel like it's a big old green flag, because I grew up during a time when it was like, that is like, that's a red flag. Oh, she goes to therapy, and it's like, yeah. And now I'm like, wow, that it's not easy to go to somebody, be vulnerable with them, and be willing to work on yourself. A lot of people, and not only work on yourself, but also just kind of take more of responsibility of how your life is going, how it's turning out. It's kind of taking charge. A lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people will just blissfully ignore what's going on within them, what's going on around them, just blame everybody else for all the things that are going wrong in their life. You're not one of them, and I think that is truly commendable. So I really hope that this was helpful. I hope that it encourages you and empowers you, and I'm really rooting for you, just like I'm rooting for myself, I guess, but maybe more. So thank you for listening to me all this time. It's been 50 minutes or close to that, but good luck. And yeah, if any of you have had any experiences when looking for therapy, or anything you'd like me to talk about next, please feel free to comment or to reach out to me through my Ko-fi page, or, well, I guess the comments are the most straightforward way. So yeah, Thank you. Bye.